What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward as we have more data coming out, not to mention some new developments on the charts that may affect whether or not the trends continue. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with the market. As you guys can see, Tesla's on a bit of a downtrend, getting a rejection off this high. It's continuing to make lower highs and lower lows, at least thus far. We saw Tesla lose structure right over here, so that's why there's still weakness on the charts. And there's going to be a big test tomorrow again. As you guys can see, Tesla got this rejection, so did SPY and the others. But this happened for many different reasons I want to talk about. And then there's going to be a test right here as we approach this support. So I'll talk more about the charts in just a couple of minutes. Let's first talk about some data. Please know that for today, okay, the majority of stocks were in the red. It was not just Tesla, and there's external factors that caused this. It wasn't just the news that came out involving Tesla. Tesla was down 4%, Nvidia was down 6%, Apple down 1%, and the list goes on. The majority of tech stocks were in the red. Some stocks were green, such as JP Morgan Chase and a couple of them in finance, but for the most part, the market was in the red and the bears had full control. So why did this happen? What's happening so far? Let's start off with Tesla. Tesla had some negative news of its own. That's why Tesla was relatively weak during the pre-market. I did talk about this. The news has come out that the NHTSA, or federal regulators, have opened a probe into roughly 2.6 million Tesla vehicles after a remote summoning feature may have led to crashes. Now, it's not a guarantee officially. They're still investigating a lot of different things that are going on. But what's going on is Tesla has once again been a part of this big probe, as the NHTSA is receiving complaints that there have been crashes due to the actually smart summon feature. And this is going to be investigating 3 crashes, which could be affecting millions of Tesla cars. Not the best of news for them. I went into more details about this probe in my earlier videos. If you guys want to check that out, where I talked about the investigation, you guys can see it in one of my last videos. However, I just want to say this was a little bit more negative for Tesla. That's why Tesla was relatively weak. Despite the weakness, Tesla was only down about 4% with about 74 million in volume. So it's not that bad. You would expect Tesla to be down a bit if the whole market comes down over some news. But once again, we're watching a very, very critical support to see if it holds. Despite the downside that came, we have some new ratings from analysts. We have Stifel giving Tesla a buy rating. They're still very bullish because of AI and their robotics developments. Evercore ISI Group is giving Tesla an inline rating, saying it's going to be performing in line with the market. And then GLJ Research is giving Tesla a sell rating, saying that Tesla is overvalued and it's going to be due for somewhat of a pullback. So different analysts have different perspectives. I think that each of them could be correct because it depends on the different time frames. For example, if you want to buy Tesla, even at levels like these, for the super long term, it's still not a bad deal if Tesla does eventually squeeze the thousands as years go on. But for the short term, there could still be some pain. And then once again, there could be more discounted prices to also be buying back in. So that's the reason why we have these different perspectives. They're looking at different time frames and different views, at least in that regard. The price-price ratio is dipping a bit because Tesla's losing a little bit of strength compared to the S&P 500. And then historically, Wednesdays are green about 48% of the time, 48% of the time. Not the best for Tesla. We tend to see more volatility at 11 o'clock a.m., 1 p.m., and then during the final hours of the day. So watch for those times for Tesla to see more volatility. Besides that, January is historically a strong month for Tesla, and February tends to be weaker. So far, we're off to a different start. January has been a little bit weaker for the whole market. That's part of why Tesla is getting dragged into this, because of some shifts in policy. So as you guys can tell, there was the probe going on for Tesla. That's why Tesla was in the red. But why did the whole market come down? What on earth is going on? I want to talk about that real quick. So what happened was we got important data. As soon as the data came out, the market dumped today. The majority of data was okay when it comes to ISM services and job openings and job quits. But one thing in particular that was not too good was the ISM services prices at 64.4 above expectations. This is showing that companies are reporting that their services prices are going up, and that's not the best for inflationary data. This basically suggests that there could be another increase in inflation, and the market's a little bit fearful about that. There's also this report that came out involving the Fed. So this is what contributed to the sell-off. The Fed have made announcements that when it comes to their economic projections, they may not be cutting as much in 2025 as they initially expected. So the reports are suggesting that for 2025, in January, they're going to most likely keep rates the same. They will not be cutting. And then for March, there's about a 50-50 chance of them cutting or not. And then in May and June, they're going to likely keep rates the same. And then there might be a cut in July or September. They'll have to we'll have to see about that. Besides that, we're not too sure about what's going to happen after that. Now, this could be subjected to change depending on data, but just know that as of right now, the Fed is determining how many cuts they're going to do, and there may only be two by the time we get to September of 2025. So the Fed is going to limit how often they cut, most likely, because they are expecting another potential increase in inflation. That's not the best of news for the markets. That's part of why the market sold off the way it did. And there's other factors affecting this, such as the way in which yields are going up. But I'm going to talk more about that in another video. But this is one of the main factors coming out because of the fact that prices data was not too good. We started to see a lot more sellers step in for the broader markets. Two more things that I'll talk about the charts. So just give me some time. We're almost there. Just know that Jefferies is going to be announcing earnings for tomorrow. On Thursday, although there's some earnings coming out, just know the stock market is going to be closed in commemorance of Jimmy Carter's funeral. So I just want to say rest in peace to Jimmy Carter and send condolences to his whole family. And then for Friday, we have Delta Airlines announcing their earnings. All right, so one last thing. We have the fear and greed index currently at fear. We're not at extremes right now. We were at extremes earlier last week. Then we got bought back up a bit. Now we're coming back to fear. So this could be shifting more this way. Momentum's at extreme fear right now because we're getting closer to the 125 daily moving average, and the market's very low compared to where it was last year. The put to call option ratio is still going down because puts were being closed again, and despite that, the sellers are still present, and volatility is neutral, stuck in the middle, but starting to go up. The VIX is increasing in value, which tends to be not the best of signs, at least for the markets. So what do I see going forward? What is my prediction when it comes to these charts? And this is very simple, okay? If you look at Tesla, we had this big test. We hit resistance, rejected, hit resistance, rejected, hit resistance near the 50 EMA, and we did not hold 425. We got a rejection as I predicted in my video from yesterday. So it's very simple. Here's what Tesla's going to most likely do. Look at the last couple of days. We popped and dropped, popped and we actually just pushed one day. Then we popped and dropped and popped and dropped. So we do tend to do that. So we could be looking for a little pop towards our 20 EMA, very close to the low 400s in the morning. And then we're going to likely test this trend line. I think we could be dipping to about the 388 or so area on Tesla. And we'll see, do we get a bounce here to start pushing into the 400s like at 414? Or do we lose support right here? If we don't hold around 388 to 385, we could be dumping all the way down back towards 380 and 374 all over again, very close to the 200 EMA over here. Then we'll see if we bounce from there. So that's going to be the big move for Tesla. It's very simple, really. Like I said before, expect a little rebound towards our 20 EMA. We'll have to see if you can hold above 406. If we can't reclaim 406 to 410, there's going to be a rejection again. So we might push close to 400, reject. We need to get back above 406 at the very least to turn back up to 414. If we can't hold above that support, which is now going to become resistance, Tesla might push to 406 and reject and retest the trend line, which I think it's going to do. And then we'll see if we get some kind of bounce or a rejection. Now, that's also going to be dependent on tomorrow's data. We have initial jobless claims in the morning, which is very minor, but I forgot to mention that at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the FOMC minutes. This is not an FOMC meeting, but just a paper report about what we saw in the previous FOMC. So at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, expect some volatility. That could be when we see the big move. For Tesla, we might pop and then drop. Then we'll see if we continue to lose the support right here at this 388 area to start dumping to 385 and 380, or if we hold support to start bouncing. I'll be watching for a big test tomorrow. But nonetheless, there is still going to be a little bit more downside coming. Tesla will be dipping most likely to the 380s, the high 380s, and we'll see if we get some kind of bounce or not. So I'll be watching that very, very closely. That's the move I'm looking for going into tomorrow. For others out there, we also happen to have SPY. SPY is looking a little bit weaker. Now, there's one problem I see. When you look at the chart, okay, we had this very, very clear head and shoulders. Okay, there's a left shoulder here, there's a head, and then there's a right shoulder. We're stuck in the middle going back and forth and back and forth, but just notice this. We hit resistance right here, rejected, hit resistance, rejected, so we were not able to invalidate the head and shoulders so far. This tends to suggest the market may have more downside if it plays out. For the head and shoulders to play out, though, we have to see us lose support. We have to break even more structure at 585, and then we have to lose around the 580 area. If that fails us, I do think we'll be dumping all the way down into the 560s. So what do I think is going to happen to SPY? It's very simple. Look at the setup. It's going to try to rebound a bit into the low 590s most likely. Then we could be looking for a retest of this trend line, which is going to be around the 586 area. I'll be watching that very closely, and then we have to hold this support. Notice we bounced off support, so we got to hold around 585 or so. If we hold that, we could attempt a bounce all over again. And if we don't hold it around 585, we're looking for a dump back down to the low 580s, all the way back down here. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for, just to be very, very frank with everyone. Will we get some kind of bounce or do we reject? I'll be watching that very closely. Look for a push tomorrow morning towards the low 590s, very close to our 200 EMA at 591. And then we could reject and start dipping to about 587-ish, around that area, 586 to 587. Then we'll see, do we get a bounce here or do we get a rejection and start dumping all the way down to about 584 and then eventually like the 580 area? I'll be watching that very, very closely just to see how things end up going. So look for a pop and a drop, and we'll see how it reacts to this support. On ES, very similar setup. We have a head and shoulders here. There's a left shoulder, a head, and then there's a right shoulder. We are technically showing some weakness. I do think this is going to rebound a bit tomorrow for about the 59.70 area. And if we reject off that, we could continue to dump to about 59.20. If we get back above 6,000, though, we could bounce. But I'm anticipating a small rebound for about 59.75, then maybe a rejection as the most likely case, as just some weakness on this chart. For others out there, we have Nvidia. Nvidia is testing previous resistance, becoming support at 140. What tends to happen is we rebound towards our 20 EMA between 143 and 145. So look for a small rebound tomorrow, and then we'll have to see if Nvidia gets a rejection again because of the big red bar. This could be a sign of a trend reversal. So might be a rebound to our key fib level somewhere in this range. And then if we can't get back above 146, we might hit like 143 to 145 and then reject. If we get a rejection, we're going to be looking for a retest of 140. And if that fills us, we dip all the way down to 138, which is where the 200 EMA is. I find this to be the most likely possibility for us to start dipping on Nvidia if we do attempt some kind of rebound. Unless we hold above like 146, I think we most likely push for 143 to 145. Then we could be looking for some kind of like rejection after that. So please keep that in mind, guys. I find that to be very probable. For Bitcoin's going to be trying to get back up to 97,782. If this rejects, we're going to be looking for a move back down to 96,500 and eventually to 95,000s. Look for a push and rejection as the most likely case, and we'll see how it goes. For NQ's on a bit of a downtrend. We're making lower highs again and again and again. Tomorrow, look for a small rebound. This is what tends to happen after so much downside. Back to this imbalance around 21,480. And then if we can't get back and break past the trend line in the 21,500s, we could hit resistance and reject and start dipping lower again. So if we don't hold 21,300, we could be dumping to 21,200 all over again like this. So we could be looking for a move like this on NQ for us to see a small pop and a rejection. If we break this resistance where the trend line is, we turn bullish. And if we can't do that, there's going to be a risk of us dipping to 21,200 flat. On the QQQ, the same thing is going on. Now, we're not touching our 200 EMA around 512. We have 515, 512, and 507 as our supports. We have resistance to watch for around 519. I anticipate it might push close to 519, but then if we can't break this trend line, it could just be another rejection back down to 512 and 507. So I see a move like this coming back down to 512, so a pop and then a drop. Then we'll see if we get a big bounce like this, or if we get a big rejection back down. I'll be watching to see which way we end up going, depending on these factors. So please watch that very closely. And then for Apple, I think we retest 241 during the pre-markets tomorrow, but then we'll see if we bounce because there are some buyers trying to defend 241. So we'll see if Apple could hold 241 near the 200 EMA. Do we bounce off this? That's going to be a big test tomorrow. If we bounce, we're looking for 244 all over again. But if we don't bounce, if we push and we get a big rejection, right? If we hit 241 and we can't bounce, we're looking for a dump to 238. So it depends on 241. Do we break past it and dump to 238 or do we bounce? I'll be watching that very closely. Let me go over just a couple more, guys. As you guys can tell, I'm a little bit under the weather right now. I am struggling with the small stuffy nose and a bit of a cough. But I just want to say that because I'm going to have to make these videos a little bit shorter just for the time being. And I hope I get better very soon just to give you guys more updates as fast as possible with more depth. So I'm going to be kind of quick with the rest of these. Netflix has resistance around 886. I do expect us to test that, and we'll see if we get a rejection. For the Russell, I think that this is looking a little bit weaker. We might retest 223 to 224. If we can't hold above 224 to start pushing for 228, we might push here, then reject to start dipping for about 220. So please keep that in mind. For coin, we're on a bit of a downtrend right now, making lower highs and lower lows. We had this resistance to watch for at that 270 area, and we have this big gap to fill down here around 248. So we could push for 270, then reject to start dipping for about the 250s. So please keep that in mind. For Amazon, we're on a bit of a downtrend. We have this gap to fill down here around 220, not to mention more lows over here. We could be retesting 222 223, excuse me, to 224, and then this could continue to fall. Typically, when you have this range, this does look like a topping structure, but we do love to get bought back up between 218 and 220. We like to reject between 228 and 230. So this looks like it might pop and then start dipping to 220, and we'll see if we bounce off that. Looks like it might have a little bit more downside, if anything. For others out there, we have Meta, which might be retesting 611 to 606. We could be dipping in that range. So look for a rebound to 620, then a rejection to 611. We'll see if we bounce in this range or not. This could attempt to form a cup and handle if we kind of dip and then bounce. If we lose 606, though, we turn a lot more bearish. So this is not looking as weak as other stocks out there. So look for a dip to about 611 to 606, and we'll see if we bounce to form a potential cup and handle. If we lose 606, though, we remain bearish, and we're looking for 600 to fail. Microsoft is looking a little bit more bearish, making lower highs here. We got to reclaim 425. If not, we're going to be dumping all the way down to about 420 to 418. For Google, we're on a bit of a downturn. We're looking for 195 as our support. If that fails us, we look for 193.5. So we might test this. We'll see if we bounce or not. Otherwise, we could be dipping to the 193.5. Look for a test of 195. Might see a little rebound to where this gap is to 196, but then we could still reject and start dipping to 193 later on, as we have a bearish structure with these wicks forming, which typically means that liquidity is being grabbed, which typically suggests more downside could be forming. With that being said, the VIX is still holding up. However, we're at resistance right now in the VIX near the 18 area. This could dip a bit, and then we'll see if it bounces and breaks out, which could be leading to more downside. So I'll be watching that very, very closely. With that being said, as far as Tesla goes, look for a big test tomorrow as we have this trend line of support that's going to be tested. Look for a pop in the morning. It might try to retest the low 400s before it dips to test this trend line. And we'll see if we get a big bounce off of that, or if we get a big rejection. I'll be watching that. And the reason why I'm a little bit uncertain is because it depends on the FOMC minutes. That data comes out tomorrow at 2 p.m. So look for some volatility. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a good rest of your day. I'll be back with another update for tomorrow, hopefully. And once again, I thank you guys so much for the kind messages in the comments. I know that I am a little bit under the weather, but your guys' kind comments do help me. So I thank you all so much for that. I'll be back tomorrow with another update, and hopefully I get better over the next couple of days. Thank you for listening. Have a good one, and peace out.